5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to Westchester Jewish Community Services. As a leading agency in providing a comprehensive spectrum of human services, we have been helping people since 1943. We serve all people in Westchester County, regardless of age, income, or ethnicity. We provide a wide variety of essential and dynamic services that make a difference in people's lives. Children, teens, adults, and senior citizens are served by our network of programs located throughout the county. When people come to us for assistance, they become part of the WJCS family. Our highly trained and skilled staff focus on you and your family and are committed to becoming your partner in finding solutions. For more than half a century, we have been connecting people to services that help them overcome mental, physical, or emotional challenges. WJCS is here in your community when you need us.
Welcome to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by government grants, private individuals and foundations, UJA Federation, United Way, and local corporations. After weeks of viewing graphic images of people and families displaced by hurricanes, many in our area have begun to wonder how they would fare if serious natural or man-made disaster were to again strike this area. We realize how vulnerable we all can be and how important it is to become better prepared to protect ourselves and to develop emergency plans. In addition, Westchester has also become a haven for some of the survivors of Katrina, and in their struggles and challenges, they look to their new neighbors for support and assistance. How will we respond to people who need to rebuild their lives and their spirits? How do we ready ourselves for unexpected events that may uproot us from our daily comforts? And how can we help those who have been emotionally affected by either their personal experiences or the media reporting, which has made us all witnesses to desperate suffering and tragic losses? Tonight we will speak with several WJCS professionals who are working with individuals and families relocated after the hurricane to learn what types of systems and procedures are in place to help people cope with emergency or traumatic situations. In the second half of our program, we will talk with an American Red Cross representative who will discuss how each of us can best prepare for the unpredictable. So to help us understand what we've been doing in Westchester, I'd like to introduce Dr. Jeff Apotheker, who is the coordinator of the WJCS Emergency Response Team. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
To Pat Lemp, who is our director of the WJCS Treatment Center for Trauma and Abuse. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you.
And with Rabbi Pamela Wax, who is our WJCS Spiritual Care Coordinator. Welcome, Pam.
Thank you.
Jeff, when we learned that several families had been dislocated and relocated to Westchester as a refuge, we felt that our agency would be able to assist them. Can you give us an idea of what happened and what came into place so that we would be able to address the needs of people who are suddenly finding themselves in Westchester?
Well, our agency, Westchester Jewish Community Services, did several things. First and foremost, we coordinated our services with the county agencies also dealing with Katrina refugees. Those would be the American Red Cross and the Westchester County Department of Social Services and Mental Health. And working with them, our primary response was to help these individuals, families with children as well as adults coming to Westchester County, meet some of their basic needs of shelter and food and clothing, and helping them get enrolled in certain entitlement programs and helping their children get enrolled in school, and helping them get some cash assistance as well. So that was the our initial response.
Do you have some sense for viewers out there of, I know we haven't had that many people that we are working with directly, but how many people actually did relocate to this area?
Well, in Westchester County, as of last Friday, the 23rd, there is about 100 families that have relocated to Westchester County that the Red Cross is dealing with and who they have registered with them. Our agency is working with about 20 individuals to date.
So these people came because they had family or they had relatives, what brought them to this part of the country so far from Louisiana or where they were, Mississippi, Louisiana?
This wave of individuals did have some connection to Westchester County prior to the storm, and so many of them have returned to some type of family connection in the county, which has been very helpful because oftentimes, these families have, sufficient resources to help them get a fresh start initially.
I know that we have quite a bit of experience helping people after fires or snowstorms or even floods on a regular basis. Can you talk a little bit about how you address the needs of people during the crisis phase when they really are bereft of everything that they might have had, and how they begin to approach getting back to some sense of normalcy in their homes?
Well, just from an organizational standpoint, since this natural disaster was of such great proportion, we organized a team of therapists and case managers within the agency. And we had just a really, really great volunteer turnout, with close to 20 therapists and case managers volunteering their time to work above and beyond their normal work schedule and location, so that this response team can see individuals at schools, in shelters, at home, or in one of our more typical settings, our clinics. So what we have done is that we've organized this team, and we've actually provided some brief trauma training to this group of therapists, even though that many of them actually specialize in trauma assessment and treatment. We've also have contacted the 47 school superintendents in Westchester County, informing them of what resources and services that we can bring to any families that they are seeing within the school district. So that's, from an organizational standpoint, some of the things that we have done. In terms of treatment, initial treatment, one of the first primary important things to do is to try to help these folks feel secure and safe where they currently reside.
Okay, well, we'll talk a little bit with Pat about the treatment. I know that we also had hooked up with the Westchester Jewish Conference for certain services. Tell us how that is working and what we are sharing with them.
This agency has been very, very important in that they have, among other things, compiled a list of donated items, which included transportation and clothing. And we actually made a match between one of the Katrina individuals and matching up with a car that was donated by the Westchester Conference. So we're playing sort of the intermediary role here in matching up donations that they have listed and the recipients here in Westchester County.
Okay. So basically, we're helping people get settled. We're helping them gather the things that they need to become comfortable. How about and Pat, maybe you can come into this as well. What are the emotional effects the traumatic experience might have when a family is uprooted and has to leave where they've been and come to a new place with nothing?
Actually, the emotional effects are profound because people are living through a trauma or a crisis, and unique to this type of natural disaster, they're also needing to leave everything behind them, everything that is familiar to them, everything that gives them comfort and a sense of safety and predictability. So emotionally, we have people who have been robbed of their homes, robbed of a sense of community, robbed of their possessions, sometimes robbed even of family members, pets. Again, the things that most of us take advantage of on a daily basis in terms of giving us a sense of safety, a sense of comfort and predictability. And they're coming to a new place and starting over without really knowing what that will be, where they'll be living. So it's very much a crisis state for these people at this point.
Mm-hmm. And obviously it would be normal to experience a sense of dislocation and trauma at that point. What type of counseling, I know we've done a little bit of training, as Jeff referred to, with some of our counselors and therapists. What type of counseling is provided initially, and then how do you know when someone is not recovering and is not moving on the way they might?
Actually, I think your point is a good one, and that is what we're seeing really are normal responses to very abnormal circumstances. So although we work in the mental health field, we're really seeing normal, healthy, resilient people trying to survive. So as Jeff suggested, the first response has to be one of restoring safety and restoring some sense of control and predictability. So you can't really do counseling, you can't really do therapy with somebody who doesn't know where they're going to be living tomorrow, or where their next meal will come from, or whether their son or brother or uncle or nephew is safe. So that the first line of intervention is really crisis intervention in terms of making sure that their daily needs are met, making sure that their children are registered in school as best one can, getting back into some kind of routine and predictability, knowing that it'll be really limited because all the things that are familiar to them are not here. But you absolutely want to restore some sense of control, some sense of having a regular schedule to give back a life to these people and give back some sense of that life will go on beyond this. In terms of ongoing work with them, one of the things that the counselors will be doing after assuring that they're safe, after assuring that they have some sense of safety and predictability, is really allowing them to talk about their story. People, as we've all seen on the news, people have lived through horrendous experiences in the aftermath of this, and letting people, not forcing them to talk about it, but allowing them an opportunity to talk about it in whatever way is helpful to them becomes really important in the healing process. We would expect to see in survivors of Katrina, we would expect to see sleep disturbance, we would expect to see anxiety, we would expect to see tearfulness. Those are very, very normal responses. You asked the question, when is it abnormal? When do you become more concerned? If somebody, I think it's too soon at this point to say that it's abnormal because it is so close to the crisis itself. But after about 2 or 3 months, if somebody is in a place where they're safe and life can go on, and they're still having nightmares, and they're not able to function, and they're not able to get out of bed in the morning, or if they're depressed on a daily basis, then I think further assessment would be important.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I've been reading a little bit about the importance of community and how that helps people to heal and people to become acclimated to a new place. Pam, maybe you can address not only that, but how people, if they are dislocated and if they are feeling at bay, when they have questions about how did this happen to me, why bad things happen to good people, how do you address that in a very fundamental way so that people don't lose faith that life is going to go on and not continue to hit them down?
Right. Well, I think compounded, I want to answer that question, but Pat speaks of loss of home, but the other, and that's sacred space for people, that home, but there's also the sacred space of their home churches or their home synagogues. And that's a spiritual symbol that often would be a refuge if anybody, let's say, went through personal loss in a fire or flood. But when it's a communal disaster and there's no refuge even in what might be otherwise sacred space, communal sacred space, that's an tremendous added loss for people. Mm-hmm. To the question of how to respond to faith issues, I think that it's very different, a communal disaster like this for folks. When you undergo a personal tragedy, there's often a tendency to say, what did I do? God's punishing me personally. And when it's on a communal level, I think that to some extent, seeing that God works in this way for people of faith, if that's their belief system, is much more difficult to reconcile in some ways. And it's really rebuilding, I think, some of the faith blocks of where was God for you in this. It might be the angels who helped, get them in a boat, got them food, helped them locate family members. It might be in the thankfulness they feel for having been reunited with family members or being taken in by another community, another family, being given clothes and food. And I think that's some of the very basic work is where was God for you, not where God wasn't for you. And the other loss, I mentioned sacred space, but when it's a communal disaster, the fact that you lose your individual ability to say, I'm the mourner here. That when there are so many people aside from yourself who need those same resources, that you can have your clergy person be there just for you because he or she has to deal with hundreds or thousands of other people as well. I think that there's such a tremendous need to be as helpers and people in the helping professions to really treat each story as a sacred story in and of its own right, and not a part of a collective story only.
Right. So there certainly is that need to listen, that need to pay attention to the individual.
Right.
We've had several years with unsettling events now. We've had starting with 9/11 and the Iraq War and the tsunami, and now we have these series of hurricanes, and yesterday's paper said that hurricanes were likely to be stronger and more prevalent over the next couple of years. Are we seeing an increase in post-traumatic stress disorder? Are we seeing the effects of people bombarded by this on television, in the media, and having more difficulty coping?
I think we're seeing an increase in people's skills, people's survival skills being challenged in a way that they've never been challenged before, and we're seeing a generation of children growing up in a very different way. I don't think it necessarily translates into a psychiatric diagnosis, post-traumatic stress disorder, as much as it translates into these are very different times, and I think as adults, as citizens, as mental health professionals, as spiritual care coordinators, we have a responsibility to think about what are children living through, what do they see when they turn on the television news, what is their understanding of what's going on. I think also if there's any good news in this, one of the pieces of good news in terms of multiple traumas happening is we're at a place where our society is paying much more attention to this, and so we now know more scientifically how to help people recover from these kinds of disasters, how to help people get back on their feet. And one of the things we know for sure, as you said before, Dale, is a sense of community, a sense of belonging, not necessarily the mental health professionals or the ambulances running in and helping someone, but friends and community and clergy stepping forward to let people know that they're there for them, to let them know that they care, and to begin to restore some type of normal life in this very difficult and unpredictable time.
Are there ways in which, besides knowing that there are certain institutions and organizations in place and maybe volunteer efforts, are there ways that people can prepare themselves and their families to be more resilient and to be prepared in the event of the unexpected?
I'll start. One thing that I would say is that families should not be afraid to talk about this, because it is all over the newspapers, all over the news, and children are exposed to it, and adults are being bombarded with it. So as human beings, one of the ways that we deal with difficult times is by talking about it. And it's important that adults talk to each other. It's important that adults have a plan for safety, whether it's something as tragic as post 9/11 and being separated from family who may be in New York City or being worried about them, or natural disasters, weather-related disasters, that families talk together about a plan for safety. How will they get in touch with each other? Where will they meet? And children should be included in those discussions, not in a way that alarms them, but rather in a way of being prepared, in the same way that we regularly prepare children for fires through fire drills in school. That does not traumatize children. It helps them, it becomes routine, it helps them be prepared. We should similarly be thinking about other types of disasters that may happen and talking to our children and our families about what is our individual plan for safety.
Mm-hmm. Jeff, anything that you would think people should be doing to make themselves better prepared, or ways in which we can respond in a better way?
Well, I mean, just on a very basic level, I think parents, just from my own informal poll of neighbors and network having a number of young children, it's just I think parents are managing at least the media in their home better. And it's good to discuss and make plans, and on the other hand, it just fills the airwaves and our newspapers, and to be better in control of those mediums when disasters like this occur vis-a-vis your family, for one. I think parents are also a little bit more aware of what to look for, at least in terms of their children and how they're experiencing these disasters that have occurred. So I think, as Pat has said, I think we have become better prepared from the parents on up organizationally to respond.
What would parents pick up if they were looking for abnormal symptoms among their children as a result of seeing too much disaster in the media?
I think there are some very direct ones, children wanting to watch it on television all the time. I was talking to one parent who said, even just flipping through looking for Nickelodeon or Sesame Street, her child was catching the news and wanting to watch that more. And so a child seeming to be obsessed with it, that relating to perhaps difficulty sleeping, kids who are normal, any change in behavior is really what we're talking about. So kids who are normally fine with separation, suddenly having a difficult time with separations, kids becoming very angry when they were not before, kids having tantrums, kids being anxious around various things. Depending on the developmental stage, it can look different, and I think what's important for parents to know is, in the same way that we as adults are now being overwhelmed by this, so our children, as much as Jeff said, we try to shelter them from it, they're seeing it, they're hearing about it. And so recognizing if one is seeing many behavior changes in a child, one of the questions, in addition to, did Johnny get into a fight in school, should really be, is my child being affected by these national disasters and the media coverage of it?
Okay. Pam, you said you were going to be going down south with some clergy that were trained through the American Red Cross. Can you give us a quick idea of what the clergy unit from the American Red Cross does to help people?
Right. Well, I'm not sure yet what we would do going down to New Orleans, or whether they'll send us elsewhere even at this point, but I was trained following 9/11. Many clergy helped out at the piers in Manhattan, and at that time, like the social workers who were on site, we made ourselves very evident through our badges that we were clergy, and as people wandered through looking for assistance, we would hear their story. I mean, it's so much of the work is about holy listening and hearing the sacred story, and I don't know how often it was that it made a difference to people that it was a person of faith. I think it did make a difference, and that they got prayers, they were offered prayers. And I imagine that some of the work will be I don't mind getting my hands dirty. You know, I wouldn't mind doing physical labor when I'm down there, but I imagine that there are tremendous spiritual needs, and I'll be there over Christmas and New Year's when I think a lot of the pain and the loss will reemerge.
Sure, sure. Well, it's wonderful that that's an aspect that's being added to this in terms of the rebuilding and enabling people to move on.
Absolutely.
Jeff, we only have a few more minutes, but I'd like to give people an idea of how they get in touch with you and what happens when they give you a call.
Well, we have one name and number to call to access all of our programs and services within the agency, as well as with the agencies that we're coordinating our response with. And that's myself, Jeff Apotheker, at 761-0600, extension 216.
Okay. And when they call, what gets put into place immediately?
Well, the first thing is that we check to see if the particular caller has registered with the American Red Cross in White Plains, and similarly with the Westchester County Department of Social Services, because those agencies can do a variety of things very quickly for the individual. And it's also important for those agencies to register individuals as well, because it helps them out as well.
So you would be the first point of entry for anyone who has come to this area and is looking for assistance.
Anybody who is contacting our agency, I'm a contact point. We get referrals from the American Red Cross and the Department of Social Services, and then we reciprocate if they've come to us first, and then we refer to those agencies to get registered. So we're all working together.
Okay. Is there anything else that we can add? We just have another minute or so to help people as they adjust in these times of crisis.
Actually, I think Pam, when Pam was speaking about the spiritual piece, one of the things we know is that people tend to do better in a sense, with a sense of community, and people tend to do better if they have spiritual beliefs. So I think recognizing that these are unique people with strengths, with spiritual beliefs, and rebuilding that sense of community, whatever it is to that individual, becomes very important.
The other thing that I think we might want to mention is the aspect of volunteering. That sometimes people in the community are wondering how they can make a difference, how they can do something for people aside from just giving money. Pam, have you seen this become more of a popular response?
Absolutely.
After these?
People want to participate. They want to feel like they're giving back to the community. And I think that is part of the response to Where's God? Is that we're all part of that whole, and we all respond, and we're all made in the divine image, and that's part of God coming through in the world.
So I thank you all, because I think you are helping us to be more welcoming neighbors to people who are coming in tremendous times of need. And Jeff, I thank you for coordinating our response team, and Pat for all the work you always do to help people who are affected by trauma, and Pam for your spiritual perspective on how people can best adjust in these very difficult and challenging times. We will be following this segment with a representative from the American Red Cross, who will be talking about how people can make their plans and be better prepared to cope in an emergency situation. Thank you. Welcome to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by government grants, private individuals, foundations, and corporations, UJA Federation, and United Way. Tonight we are talking about coping with the unexpected. The beginning of this century has been tumultuous and has challenged many of our institutions, families, and citizens to cope with unprecedented situations in our nation. From the 9/11 attacks to the devastating hurricanes of recent weeks, We have been forced to examine how we respond as a country, as individuals, and as helping organizations when tragedies strike. In the first half of this program, we discussed the emergency response team, trauma counseling, and spiritual support available through WJCS. Coordinating with other Westchester service agencies, WJCS has designated a team of professionals who are able to provide extensive case management and emotional support to people dislocated or affected by the Gulf Coast hurricanes. Building upon experience helping those who have had to relocate due to fire, snowstorms, or other emergencies, our staff can quickly access donations of material goods or refer individuals and families to resources in the community. As part of many networks that are always available to help people in crisis, we are available now to work with other agencies to assist people in need. We will provide phone numbers during this program and at the end of the show to enable you to find help if you are in need. Now we are going to turn to the work of the American Red Cross in the Westchester area, and we will talk with Stuart Bethiles, who is the Director of Emergency Services for the Westchester branch of the American Red Cross. Stuart, you must have been very busy over the past month, and I'm sure you continue to be because these hurricanes don't stop. Can you tell people a little bit about what the role of the Red Cross is and what you are involved with at this point?
Certainly, and thank you for having us here tonight. The Red Cross is an international organization. It's in the United States, and it also has a play into the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. So we're part of an international movement. And as such, we help people prepare for and respond to emergencies in the communities on a local basis. And that's the case in Westchester County. We have a number of volunteers, over 1,400 associated with the chapter, and we do preparedness exercises and community outreach, community disaster education programs. And of course, when there's the need, and there is on a regular basis, we respond to the call for our services here in Westchester County and in the outlying areas in the region and nationally.
Mm-hmm. So you said you have 1,400 volunteers. Are those trained people, and is there also staff, or do you train people to work as like a volunteer fire department when emergencies arise?
Well, nationally speaking, and then I'll speak locally, nationally we have 1.8 million volunteers and about 35,000 staff. So you understand that this is very much a volunteer effort that is supported by professional staff such as myself. I was a volunteer for 20 years prior to becoming the Director of Emergency Services, so I understand the role of the volunteer, and it's really the work of the volunteers that gets all the work done that's needed to be done. And we have, as I said, 1,400 volunteers that have been trained. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've actually brought about 500 new volunteers that have come out to be trained for Red Cross, to be deployed to the affected areas. And we've sent to date about 100, and we're getting to send about another 20 out. So some people are available after the training to go immediately, and others are going to be going as the weeks go on. It's a very long-term operation, and that's what we gear up for year in and year out, training people on a regular basis. But we also have the ability to gear up and make these people available to the disaster operation should they want to go.
Mm-hmm. So tell us a little bit about what happens when you find families now who are relocating to Westchester. We talked with Jeff about what an agency like ours is doing, but how are you obviously are dealing with wider numbers than we may be, and how are you responding? What do you provide?
Well, the American Red Cross works cooperatively with many agencies such as WJCS, and we We get contact. Sometimes we'll get a phone call. Sometimes people will just show up at the chapter and say that they are from the affected areas, and we do casework with them, and we're providing immediate emergency financial assistance to the individuals. And then we refer people to other agencies such as the Department of Social Services and certain faith-based agencies, should that be something that they would like. We always provide the resources that it makes the client most comfortable. And we follow their cases to make sure that they have their needs met on a long-term basis. So we work very cooperatively with all the other social service agencies in the county and the United Way, of course.
Okay. Is there an example? Can you give people a sense of, a case that may have come in that might demonstrate how you have coordinated with other agencies to relocate and make someone
Certainly.
comfortable?
There have been several cases where people have come to us with literally the clothes on their back. They have, most of them have driven up from the area over the last couple of weeks, and they've come in needing financial assistance, and the first thing we do is give them the immediate cash stipend so that they can go and buy what items they need. Most people that have come to Westchester have come to family members and friends in the area, so they have initially a place to stay, which is best to be with people that you know that can comfort you. We always recommend that. We prefer that people stay with friends and family initially. What we do then is refer people to the Department of Social Services specifically for housing, because it was agreed early on in the process of our collaborative efforts with the other agencies to be able to allow the Department of Social Services to be the compendium of all of the offering of different housing resources in Westchester County. And we found that the families have in fact been placed in different locations. And then, of course, it's more than just finding them a place. Many people, even though they're here with friends and family, may be new to the community or haven't been in the community in a while. So we're always looking to make sure that the agencies give support services, mental health support, and other types of services that they might need.
Obviously, there was an article in yesterday's paper, someone who needed a job, and that also is very core
Yes.
to whether people will be able to survive.
Exactly, and we had a case that was interesting that you mentioned, looking for a position. We had a client that came in that was someone who was experienced in home health care, and we had a volunteer that works as a supervisor in a home health care agency. So when the volunteer found out that we had this person, they sent them right over and they hired them. So these type of things are happening on a regular basis, and there's a lot that Westchester County has to offer people, and those things are being made available to them.
While we are certainly watching all of these issues and circumstances occur in the Gulf Coast area, it may seem remote today, although it finally rained today, but there are certainly plenty of opportunities for disaster in our community. What is the state? I think people are now more concerned than ever before, having seen that the systems may not work as we had hoped in our local communities, that we may not be able to depend upon everything working so well. How do people become more comfortable and find themselves ready to cope if the unexpected does occur?
Well, it's interesting that you use the word unexpected, and being 20 years working in disaster services, and prior to that being an emergency medical technician as a volunteer in Yonkers, there's nothing that's unexpected. I expect, it's an occupational hazard, I guess. We expect these things to happen. But it's important for people to understand that we live in the kind of society where things can be remote. We watch it on television. Even the tragedy that happened on 9/11 was something that it didn't happen here in Westchester, so there was a sense of remoteness, even though there were people who were deeply affected by it here in Westchester by having lost loved ones there. But the issue is that things can happen here. We have been blessed in a way that we haven't had very many serious storms, I think, in the last 50 years. but the potential is there for ice storms, which happened upstate New York, where people were trapped in their homes for upwards of 2 weeks. Around the turn of the century, we had the no-name storm of around 1923, I believe, over Long Island, which basically completely destroyed what was then farmland. But now, of course, Long Island is very populated, as is many of the shoreline areas and in interiors of Westchester. So these type of things are very worrisome to emergency planners, and we were always looking to improve our plans for the system to work. The issue is the individual. As we've seen in the Gulf Coast situation, many times people may not have been prepared personally, or neighborhoods may not have been prepared. And this is something that people in Westchester need to realize, that preparedness is the essence, that help will come from the government and from the state and from the agencies that are trusted to do the helping. But we tell people they have to be, and absolutely have to be, able to be sustained on their own for upwards of a week. A minimum of a week. They have to have food and water and the necessary medications they might have available to them for 1 week. It takes about that length of time, as we've seen, to bring in all of the forces that need to be brought in to sustain a disaster relief operation. And there's a lot that people can do to make that happen. There are several steps.
Right. I'd like to go into that, but one thing is what you would have available to you if you were able to be in your home. The other is, what about evacuation plans? I think one of the scariest things I felt was that people feel, oh, you can get in your car. Well, your car is only going to go 200 and some odd miles, and you won't have gas anymore. And if you're not in a safe place by then, you could be stranded.
Exactly.
How else do people prepare if they can't stay in their homes and need to evacuate?
Well, first is to really understand how evacuations work, understand that sometimes warnings that are given by the Weather Bureau, they give timely warnings. They start off in more subtle tones, and people who really follow the weather, now that we have the Weather Channel and other entities like that, we should just be more aware of the seasons and the weather, to understand that we're in a cycle of bad weather, a 20-year cycle of bad weather, where we also have the unusual heating of the Gulf and the Atlantic, and that has been something that's added to the strength of these storms. And just having a general knowledge of your environment and understanding of what could happen would put people into a much better place when they hear about a hurricane warning or hurricane activity. They'll take a little bit more time and pay a little bit more attention earlier on, rather than waiting to the day before and say you have 48 hours and now you have to run around and scramble. So that alone is good, just paying more attention. And also, of course, being prepared for an evacuation, having the necessary legal documents, having your medications, prescriptions that people need to have, not just having the medication, but having your doctor have extra scripts in case where you're going, if you need to refill, you'll have those. Sometimes there may be a type of evacuation that is not weather related, may be related to some type of a chemical spill or other types of scenarios like that, where you may not be able to get back to your home. You may be out and you'd have to go from wherever you are, making arrangements to meet family members, having a good system of communication, not depending necessarily on cell phones, because sometimes cell phones don't work, especially during an emergency that may be tied up. So there has to be a system of communication within a family, and then a plan to be able to go no matter where the emergency happens or what time of the day or night. People should plan and talk about this as a family, or even as a neighborhood. Sometimes it's appropriate for community groups to discuss these items.
Mm-hmm. You talked about having legal documents, and I guess it was also apparent that people who had their homes washed away, what's the proof of your ownership? Where do you have your bank accounts if your bank is no longer where it was? What is realistic for people to keep them. Where should they keep them if they can't get back to their homes?
Well, what we tell people is that take copies of important documents and send them to a trusted person, a family member, outside of an area. And this way you know you have a set of documents in some type of a sealed envelope that can be relied upon. And there are a lot of people that are coming out of the area that did not bring documents with them that they need. United States passport is always a great form, and some people might not have them. But definitely having extra documents that are ready to go in some type of a box or a folder that you can take with you in case you're asked out in the middle of the night for some reason in a scenario that would be that type of scenario. So those type of things should be looked into. There's plenty of time to do that now.
I think I'm
before it
overwhelmed
happens.
just thinking about it.
Yeah, well, it's worth it. And one of the things we like to offer people is that while it may be a traumatic thing to have to think about these things, what I've noticed over the years is once people do these things, it's almost like there's a peace of mind that I've done what I can do, that I can be effective in working on a plan and some type of scenario where we can deal with a disaster. And once you've done it, you can put it aside and know that you're prepared, and you actually sleep better at night, I say.
Okay. Talk a little bit about what a family should put in place, aside from documents and things of that sort, what they should actually plan for and go over, what you should have on at your hand and ready, or in your home and ready, so that if you are in an emergency, you are prepared.
Well, as I've mentioned before, we of course have the actual planning process to sit down and talk about these things with children in an appropriate manner, of course. Having a place to go is very important. If an evacuation is ordered and you're able to use your own means of mobility to get out, a car and such, you need a place to go. And ideally, you will have already made arrangements with a family or friends at some distant location that are expecting you. The idea is not to call up and say at 11 o'clock at night, we'll be there in 3 or 4 hours. These people should be ready to receive you with enough food and other necessary things to sustain whoever's going to be staying at that location. And the idea is that it's a simple thing to do. Secondly, you need to have a family preparedness kit. Again, we need people to be able to prepare for a week at home if you have to shelter in place. But if you have to leave your home, you should have certain items in an easily reachable bag that has some of the essentials, a change of clothing, water, some emergency food, things that will make the journey on the road at maybe 2 o'clock in the morning a lot more palatable. Having your gas tank always topped off, but never letting it go past half. I mean, it's hard for people to gas up every night, especially with what's going on now.
Right.
But we do say always have at least a half a tank of gas because you never know what might happen. There may be a blackout, and a blackout might be associated with an evacuation for some reason. So you may not be able to get gas at late at night. But again, planning, training is important. We offer, the Red Cross offers training for people in terms of disaster preparedness. We have programs that we do for the public called Together We Prepare, that we like to offer to many communities and civic groups that we've done. And in that presentation, we go into some more details about what people should do to prepare. But it's food, it's having your medicines necessary, and having the ability to leave and have enough gas to get out, and having a place to go that you're expected.
Let's just talk for a minute about those people who don't have the ability to get in a car, because I think one of the disturbing aspects of the Katrina hurricanes were the people who could not get away and relied upon public transportation. And many of those are probably our viewers tonight too, even though we live in a pretty car-reliant atmosphere here. There are plenty of people who rely upon public transportation. What are the options for somebody like that?
Well, I think first it's important for people to know the community disaster plans that are in effect. Many communities in Westchester County have plans. The Westchester County itself has a plan. The Red Cross has a plan. So there are a lot of plans available. And what we've seen, I think, in the Gulf Coast situation is that they had a lot of plans. But it might be, and this will of course remains to be seen, whether the resources were available in the timeliness necessary. And that's something that we need to take heed here in our areas, that planning is good and necessary, but we must make sure that all of the resources that the plans indicate are there for our use at the time the plan is executed. And I know that over the last 20 years I can say that the planning and the resources that go into the planning have been markedly increased, and I think we're in a better position than we've ever been, but we still have a ways to go in order to educate the public, because again, it's the individual family or the individual household that really needs to be prepared. If they're prepared, it decreases the burden on the system that will be put into place during a disaster. So there's much fewer people that have to be dealt with, and only the most, all the resources can be brought to the most serious situations. So it's important that individuals do this preparedness and planning.
So if you are reliant upon public transportation and have to know what the bus routes are, have to know where you might meet, and is that information readily available from each town hall?
Yes, I would suggest that people contact their local government agencies and ask about evacuation procedures, and I think that they'll find that that most plans are available. I don't know that it's generally made available. All of the plan is made available to the public, but that part that's not sensitive to security issues or other types of things should be available, and people should know. And also get to know your neighbors, because it may be that you can't get into a car and go, but if you make arrangements ahead of time, if people are leaving from an area and you know that you need to get out, maybe you can partner with neighbors and say, could you take me with you? And certainly that can be done by people planning for this.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. Maybe you want to do a little bit of an update on what the Red Cross response to Katrina has been, and what is ahead for people who've relocated to Westchester.
Well, of course, we're always ready to help people coming out of Katrina or Rita, as the case may be, in any other situation. We have about 900 Red Cross chapters nationally, one of which, of course, is the Westchester County chapter. And we have trained volunteers and staff that are always available to help people. Right now, I think to date, over 900 shelters have been opened nationally. I think they're in 25 or 28 states. Thousands of volunteers are coming from all 48 states to the affected areas. We've sent over 100 volunteers from Westchester County alone, plus one of our response vehicles down, which went down in the first wave of response. The Red Cross is collecting millions of dollars. The information I have as of today is that we're spending a little bit more than we're actually taking in at this point.
Is that really so?
Yes.
It just seemed like such a phenomenal response.
There's a lot of money coming into the system, and it's greatly needed. The Red Cross estimates at this point that upwards of $2 billion will be necessary. We've collected about $870 million. And these are huge amounts of money, and it may think that it's a huge job to do all this work, but it's still an amount of money that we're not fully collected in, and we're hoping that the generosity of the American people will continue, because that's where we get our funding from. We're not a government agency. We depend on the graciousness and the goodwill of the American people to support our efforts. And I think we're at 91 cents on the dollar, because it's a volunteer organization. We're able to deliver those services very economically. So we certainly will continue to do that work on behalf of the people. We have a congressionally mandated charter. We are the lead relief organization. We work cooperatively with many different faith-based and service organizations around the country to do our work, a very essential part of our cooperative effort. but we certainly do need the funds, and we will continue to put those funds to good use.
If people want to volunteer, what are the qualifications? How does someone get in touch with you to be a volunteer?
Well, I have to say that we have all kinds of people from all walks of life, young and old. You have to be 18 years of old or age of old or older in order to be able to go without parental consent. If you are interested in volunteering for the Red Cross, there are many, many different kinds of jobs. We do our training for you. You can call us at 914-946-6500 and ask for volunteer services. And we've been training people, as I mentioned earlier, every week for 3 weeks. We've almost 500 trained, and so we will continue to do that as long as the need is there. Those that come back from the experience will be very well versed in what we will need here when the emergency happens locally. So we're lucky to have the experienced people coming back from the Gulf, and definitely could use them here for our local operations as they are needed.
I guess that's an important part. It's a little scary. You said when, not if.
Exactly.
And definitely, I think we all realize that we are more vulnerable, and that anything can happen here and can happen to anyone in any part of the country and in any walk of life. So I thank you for sharing your thoughts and for helping us to feel that we can be a little bit more prepared if we take the time. And is there a website with information about preparedness that people can
Certainly.
log on to?
www.redcross.org will put you in touch with our all the information you need. There's a lot of downloadable information there. Also, if you'll click on the links to go to chapters, you'll be taken there to the local Red Cross chapter in Westchester County, where there's additional information. So there's plenty of resources out there, and we certainly encourage people to use them.
Okay. Thank you very much, Stuart, and I wish you the best in terms of helping people in Westchester County become more comfortable here in the county and be more prepared.
Thank you very much for having me.
And I want people to know that if you need services from WJCS, you can give us a call at 761-0600, extension 216. We also have information on our website, which is WJCS.com, so you can give us either click on or give us a call, and we hope you will all stay safe. Thank you and good night.